What if I told you that one man convinced 918 people, many of them highly intelligent and devoted idealists, to die together? It is one of the darkest chapters in history, and yet the true horror of Jonestown is not the body count, but the question of how James Warren Jones successfully engineered a psychological system that removed the basic human instinct for survival. This is not just a story about a cult, but a clinical look at how hope can be weaponized. It begins not with fear, but with a promise. Jim Jones started the People's Temple in Indiana and later in California by promoting a seemingly beautiful vision. He saw a future of racial equality and a truly integrated community where the sick and the poor would be protected. And because this was during a time of intense civil rights struggle and unrest in the United States, Jones's message resonated deeply with idealists and people who felt marginalized by society. Many of the early members were thoughtful and compassionate people, including teachers and doctors, and they truly believed they were building a perfect socialist utopia on Earth. They were not uneducated, but they were searching for deeper meaning, and they longed for a community that offered purpose and acceptance. These were people who wanted to change the world, and they wanted a strong leader who offered absolute certainty in uncertain times. And once a person accepts that the group has the one true answer, that is when the dangerous psychological journey truly begins. Jones's first major tactic was known as love bombing. When a new member joined, they were immediately overwhelmed with affection, with compliments and constant, powerful attention. They felt valued and instantly important, and for someone who had been feeling lost or rejected, this experience could feel life-changing. But that warmth was immediately followed by a test. Jones constantly performed staged miracles, known as hoaxes, like pretending to cure cancer by coughing up bloody chicken gizzards. And although many members knew these acts were fake, they chose to ignore the truth to stay in the comforting circle of the group. As the years went by, Jones began to consolidate his power and started making increasingly impossible demands on his followers. He required members to sign over their houses and their bank accounts to the People's Temple, and he demanded that they address him as father or dad. And although many people were beginning to see the manipulation, they stayed because they had already invested everything they had, their money, their careers, and their social lives, into the group. And then came the ultimate manipulation tool: isolation. Facing increased media scrutiny and legal challenges in the US, Jones convinced more than 900 people to move thousands of miles away to the jungles of Guyana, where they would build a new agricultural compound called Jonestown. This move was presented as escaping the evils of American fascism, but in reality, it was a way to completely cut off his followers from the outside world. In Jonestown, the control became absolute. All passports were confiscated, and all communication with outside family and friends was controlled and monitored. The followers were forced into grueling, 12-hour workdays under the hot sun, and then required to attend endless mandatory evening meetings where Jones would rant for hours. This enforced sleep deprivation, along with constant public shaming and punishment, systematically wore down their ability to think critically. But the most chilling technique used in Jonestown was the frequent white night drills. These were rehearsals for a mass suicide, which Jones constantly framed as a heroic, revolutionary act against their enemies. Jones would gather everyone and present them with a flavored drink, telling them it contained poison and that they all had to drink it together. Although the drink was harmless most of the time, the members were repeatedly conditioned to obey the command to die, and this process slowly desensitized them to the very idea of mass suicide. They were trained to believe that choosing death with the group was preferable to facing the terrifying consequences of life outside the compound. The end came swiftly, and it was triggered by a visit from the outside world. On November 17, 1978, U.S. Congressman Leo Ryan arrived in Jonestown with a delegation that included journalists and concerned family members. The group intended to investigate claims of forced imprisonment and abuse, and although Jones tried to maintain the illusion of a happy, perfect utopia, several members slipped notes to the congressman, begging to be taken out. And when Congressman Ryan prepared to leave on November 18th with about 15 defectors, Jones knew that the public scrutiny and potential legal action would destroy his authority forever. Jones ordered his security team to follow the departing group to the remote Port Kaituma airstrip, and it was there, on the muddy runway, that the gunmen opened fire. Congressman Ryan, 3 journalists, and a defector were brutally murdered, and this act instantly removed any possibility for Jones to escape justice. His fate, and the fate of the entire community, was now sealed. Returning immediately to the pavilion, Jones swiftly assembled his followers for the ultimate and final White Night gathering. And it is on the chilling death tape, which remains the most famous audio evidence of the tragedy, that we hear his final manic message. He screamed that their socialist utopia was utterly destroyed, and that they would inevitably be captured and tortured by American forces. Therefore, he didn't just ask them to follow, but rather issued an urgent command to take the cyanide-laced, grape-flavored drink, forcing them into a horrifying, final act that he branded as revolutionary suicide. The reality was a scene of coercion and chaos. The adults lined up, but mothers and nurses were seen forcing the poison into the mouths of infants and children first. By the time Guyanese authorities arrived, the compound was silent. 918 bodies lay scattered, mostly around the central pavilion, and this tragedy remains the largest loss of American civilian life in a deliberate act until the attacks of 9/11. Today, the phrase "don't drink the Kool-Aid" is a common warning about conformity, but the deeper lesson of Jonestown is far more complex than just blind obedience. It is a profound, tragic study in how emotional isolation, economic dependency, and systematic psychological abuse can warp the human mind. Jonestown shows us that vulnerability is not a flaw, but a critical risk factor, and that the promise of belonging, when offered by the wrong person, can be the most dangerous trap of all.